Thank you for tuning in to our short training video on how to complete VOCA reports and track data for this grant. The purpose of this short video is just to give everyone some additional instructions about the database that we use and how we interpret each of the headings in that database and how this whole process works. We also want to give you the ability to view this reference material as your schedule allows. It's very difficult to get all of us together in the same room, so the idea is that you can view this video whenever it's convenient for you and then go back and watch it again if you need to have another reference in the future for something that you just can't remember. So this whole training is about the VOCA data tracking worksheet. As you know, we're using a Google document now. You can access that in Gmail. It's best accessed in Chrome as your browser because it just works really well. You see what's circled there where it says Google Drive. That's what you want to click on. And if you're signed into your email and using Chrome, I think you probably won't have any problem entering your information. As you enter a number in a cell, as soon as you hit enter or return, that data is saved. It's automatically saved, so you don't have to look for a save button and do that manually. It also allows us all to work simultaneously, which is probably the best feature of this Google Doc, so that we can all be in the document at the same time working on the same thing. I sent out some instructions earlier. If you didn't have a chance to look at those, please pull that up. It's just a document titled Instructions, and it has a printout where you can view it online, the electronic copy, but it will show you column by column what kind of data we're collecting and how to understand what should be put in that column. So for instance, here in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see I want to draw your attention to that space in each tab of the document because that's going to tell you the reporting period and when your data entry will be due. In this case, it was going to be due on the 12th, but I've extended that deadline for this month to the 19th, and we'll talk about that more later. Also, in the very first column, under individual ID, that's pretty self-explanatory. I think everyone knows what that number is. But what we're doing now is listing involved caregivers as 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3 of that original number. And that just allows us to document the number of adults or involved caregivers that we are also serving. In the second column, new individuals, everyone will be counted as a new individual, a new client in the first quarter of this new contract period. And that's just because VOCA likes to see everybody be new that first quarter. The only people who might not be new in the first quarter are anonymous contacts, and those are just people that maybe they call in, but you don't have any kind of demographic or any kind of identifying information about them, and that's where we will record them. That's a new column. Continuing individuals later in the year as we move forward from here on, just to clarify, the first time that we see a child, they're new. Then if we see that child in a subsequent quarter, let's say for therapy, for instance, they're continuing. That's kind of straightforward. So clients are continuing if the services are related to the original disclosure. But if we serve them again in a later time period for a completely different disclosure, then they go back to being a new individual, a new client. I hope that makes sense. If you see the instruction sheet, I think that will help to clarify each of these columns. There are three main columns that I wanted to point out to you. The first one, A4, is for advocates. This is where you guys should focus a lot. You use many columns, but this is one that we use to track one of our goals for the grant. So it's real important for you to make sure you pay attention to column A4, and that's where you record all of your referrals for other services that they may need. Forensic interviewers will mostly use column B5. That's where you will record all of the interviews that you do, and therapy should be recorded under C6. There are some headers there that could be a little bit confusing, so I just wanted to point out that those are the three that we use primarily for advocates, forensic interviewers, and therapists. Of course, advocates use several columns, but forensic interviewers and therapists pretty much use just those two. These are our grant goals. We have 5 goals that we have to report back on to VOCA. We'll go through these one by one here in a second, but I just wanted to say I understand that the wording isn't really ideal for some of these goals because they are created by VOCA. They give us a drop-down list of goals, and these goals, could be applied to homeless shelters, women's shelters, all different kinds of agencies. And so we just have to choose the ones that work best for us. And that's why the wording is a little bit strange on these. We did not write these goals. So the first one is a therapy goal, and it's 90% of children will understand the abuse was not their fault. The way we calculate our results for this goal is on using the Mental Health Services Therapy Update form. That's a monthly form that's collected, and there is a question there that says, does the child understand the abuse wasn't their fault? So we just literally take that number and divide it by the total number of updates. The second goal is also a therapy goal. 85% of children will have an increased knowledge about common responses to child sexual abuse. And again, we use that same monthly therapy update form. There's a question that is specific to that goal there. The third one is a forensic interview goal. This one is 90% of children will be able to identify a safe place or person in their lives. And while the wording is not exactly the same, on the grant information sheet that you guys use for forensic interviews, we do have that question. And so that's how we calculate our results for goal number 3. It's important that everyone in both offices use this grant information sheet for every forensic interview so that we can calculate that goal accurately. The next one is an advocacy goal, and 85% of involved caregivers will have an increased knowledge about common responses to child sexual abuse. And I'm sure this will look familiar to you, the initial visit caregiver survey. Question 7 is the one that's most similar to that, and all of these results are fed into OMS, and then we're able to pull those numbers when we're ready to do a report. Number 5 is 75% of involved caregivers will have increased knowledge of community resources they might need, and this is that one that I told you about earlier. So we take, this is that column A4. So we take the total of the total amount of A4, and then we divide it by the number of involved caregivers. In other words, I'll take that number and then I'll count up how many lines have a 0.1, a 0.2, a 0.3, and then I'll divide the total that was in A4 by that number to get that percentage and report for that goal. So just a quick overview. These are our VOCA Vixens, our VOCA staff. The people in the top section we're currently VOCA staff. The people in the bottom section are new with this grant. The grant started in October. The people that are highlighted, Sandy, Sissy, and Amy, are in VOCA as supervisors, and so they do not report data on this tracking form. Everyone else will. It's important to note that you have a specific VOCA title. So Callie, your title is Advocate 1, and Tysa, you're Advocate 3. and Jessica your advocate 4. It's helpful to know for billing purposes and just for the grant purpose. There's no significance to any of those numbers. It's just that's when we say advocate number 4, we're talking about Jessica. So it's helpful to know what your VOCA title is in terms of the reporting and billing that we do. And you can see that in summary, we have 4 advocates, an interviewer, 3 other victim services staff, 3 mental health therapists, 2 other staff, that's just Sissy and the community awareness specialist, for a total of 9 people in Wentzville and 4 people in Hannibal. And that's why this training is important, because we want to get everybody on the same page at both sites. Just a reminder, the quarterly reports are due, your information, your data entry of all of your client information is due in the mid-month after the completion of that quarter. So for this quarter, our reporting period is October through December of 17, and your deadline is January 19th. Again, I'm giving you just a little bit extra time because of the holiday and with this being the first quarter and getting everybody up to speed. I noted the other deadlines there just for your reference. And then at the end of the year, this is a 24-month grant. So we'll just do all of this again, and we'll have similar dates next year. It's the same process. But at the end of September, we'll have to calculate all of our 4th quarter information so that we can submit our annual report at the end of October. So again, this is just the idea of this Google Doc and of the work that Christine is doing with billing is just to make these things a little bit more manageable so you can focus on what you do best, which is serving kids and families. And we do appreciate all of your time and effort to make these grants work, and we're trying to make that process a little bit easier for you. If you have any questions, please email me or give me a call. Thank you.